The following video contains spoilers. We suggest watching the episodes alone in the dark. I gotta get out of here! I gotta get out of here! This door better be the exit. Ah! Oh no! It's Twilight Zone month!
You're traveling to another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are only that of the imagination. You're entering the Twilight Zone.
Howdy, partner. Well, your old internet kitty catastrophe may be running for his 9 lives, but that won't stop us from indulging on another month of the iconic classic horror show, Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone. We've taken on a ton of great gems and some sour grapes, but we still haven't completed this masterpiece theater yet, so we'll fix that. Let's start this showdown with the Twilight Zone's very first weird western, Mr. Denton on Doomsday. And boy, did we get another mixed bag of stories, since this one is sadly not a perfect kill shot. This episode is nothing too special or grand, as it's clearly one of the early day season 1 episodes, where the Twilight Zone hadn't yet found its footing and was still trying to set up the series' signature style. But a few season 1 episodes were like this one, very middling and not the outlandish crazy fun the Zone grew into. I didn't love this episode, but there was an equal amount of good and bad.
Perfectly balanced, this whole thing should be.
In this tale of the Wild West, we follow a drunken loser named Mr. Denton, who's fallen on hard times after his badass reputation slipped down the toilet. Denton used to be a tough-as-nails gunslinger who always scored perfect shots and struck fear into the hearts of men across the land, but lost his mojo and became an alcoholic bum laughed at by the whole town. He's looked down upon by idiot bullies, ridiculed by a via who once feared him, and is a total nobody now. Denton is played by Dan Daria, who's known for acting as villains in dramatic films, which makes sense, because as we learn more and more about the former gunman, he used to be a former villain himself. The Old West atmosphere is made all the better thanks to this old dog's woes. He truly grants this episode a good performance, but the writing leaves a lot to be desired for me to call this episode excellent. Denton reveals to one of his ex-girlfriends that he's accepted his pitiful fate as punishment for his sins of the past. Apparently, Denton loved challenging wannabe outlaws to duels, but gave up on himself when one day he killed a teenage boy.
The guy who asked me to prove it turned out to be 16 years old. I left him there bleeding to death with my bullet in him.
Little bastard shot me in the ass.
So Denton realized that he lived long enough to see himself become the villain, and punished himself for his evil, never standing up for himself ever again. Ordinarily, this would be a fantastic arc, but it gets muddled very quickly halfway through. Denton's routinely picked on by the town's idiot bully, Martin Landau, in one of his earlier roles. Landau is honestly kind of fun for how over-the-top mean he is. But alas, he's not here very long. When Denton is humiliated in public, he's eventually aided by, no joke, a mysterious magic traveling salesman, actually named Fate.
You are mistaken.
Who intervenes to set Denton's life on the light path. Seeing how pathetic the old-timer is, Fate rewards Denton a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? which he quickly gets attuned to once Denton accidentally uses it to injure idiot bully Landau, sends message to the troublemakers to beat it, and regains his backbone. Hooray! But then the episode goes down a very bizarre direction, and not in a good Twilight Zone way. Somehow Denton transforms into a radically different person, and this episode becomes a character study where the guy reflects back on his past and what he'll do now that he has Linkara's magic gun. After beating the idiot bully, he somehow becomes famous again and gets challenged by a second idiot bully rival who seeks to duel the old man to prove he's the quickest draw in the West, where Denton questions if he wants to return to his old habits or kick them. I don't think this aspect is done very well. Despite his actor giving his all for a gray anti-hero, Mr. Denton's not very interesting, and this episode is so slow. Half of it spent showing how Denton needs his balls back. Then, next part is a whole new plot. Not to mention, the moral dilemma is super weak, since he uses magic to regain his skills, and we know it's not all his doing. It's literally fate. The magic salesman is pretty much behind everything in this episode, and Denton already knows he doesn't like being a gun-wielding egomaniac, so his character development feels weightless. He already knows himself. Plus, they hype up this rival for Denton's duel when he pretty much feels like the exact same baddie as Martin Landau, and we never see his shooting skills, so the duel doesn't get the great build-up the episode desires. Mr. Denton suddenly discovers that his skills are gone, so he eventually speaks with fate, where the magic man sells him a super elixir, which will make him the fastest shooter for a few seconds, enough to win duels, which naturally Denton takes. I do like the idea behind Dr. Fate, since he does feel like a unique character thanks to his ominous nature and wise sage-like advice, but the only issues I have is that he feels almost kind of threatening for a supposed nice guy.
Go ahead. Drink it. Go ahead. Draw on it. Draw on it.
Don't make me cut ya, bitch. This guy's meant to be a vital twist character, but rewatching it does make it feel like the actor thought this was a deal with the devil role. However, the day of the duel arrives, yet when Mr. Denton squares off with the rival, they see that they both have the magic elixir, and realize it's a setup.
Oh!
And they both shoot each other's hands at the same time, somehow never bleed from bullet wounds, and the duel ends in a draw, where the doctors quickly patch them up in seconds and announce that they can't use those hands to shoot ever again. Yeah, that's it. The fight's under 2 seconds, they both lose their good hands, somehow can't use their working hands to continue fights, and it ends.
We paid $9 for this?
I paid 10.
The climax is so hilariously lame that I actually laughed when I saw it. A frickin' western. A western Twilight Zone tale had a laughably bad showdown. I actually think Coat Rack Cowboy had a more epic finale than this. Oh, but it's only made more humorous when we get to our twist ending. It turns out that Dr. Fate planned this all along. Fate is actually a divine angel who manipulated events and took away the skill of both cowboys in order to feed them humble pie, giving them a taste for redemption by teaching them that there's more to life than being a pro marksman, and life is precious. Mr. Denton is grateful he learned this lesson and can be normal now, while Fate tips his hat goodbye and rides off into the sunset to change more lives. While I did like the idea of this being a second chance plot, this was a super underwhelming middle of the road episode.
Little bastard.
Believe it or not, I have the same issue with this episode as Swarm and Norman, the sudden shift in character. In Swarm and Norman, the bug-loving kid goes from a tragic bully victim into an awful bully himself. But the problem, we never see how he got there, as the episode speeds past his whole rise to an irredeemable prick himself so quick that you don't buy it. The same applies to Mr. Denton. He also is this tragic loser who gets picked on until he grows a spine and stands up for himself, only for the episode to totally shift gears and make him this wrongdoer who needed a life lesson to put him in his place when we skipped over most of his progression back to bad. I felt nothing for this twist of fate ending since it's so rushed and clunky. It's too difficult to buy that Mr. Denton had to be humbled when the episode showed that he already did regret being a prick and was punishing himself for his past. I ended up not feeling anything in this since its pacing is so off. The plot awkwardly changes to a radically different cautionary tale out of nowhere. The action in this western is lame, and the happy ending is just dropped on you. This is another sloppy start towards a great show. I can honestly understand folks enjoying this one since there are some epic visuals and a strong western atmosphere, but the story and characters feel messy. I don't recommend Doomsday at all since it's just so slow, boring, unfocused, and mishandles its message of appreciating life when it both wants Mr. Denton to climb out of his pit while also warning you to learn valuing what you have, succeeding at neither. I grant this iron piece a bronze skull. It's not horrific, yet it's far from a must-watch even for fans. Sorry for starting us out on a meh note. Mr. Denton can shoot, yet missed a perfect bullseye.
You'll never be able to fire a gun again in anger. You're blessed, son. We've both been blessed.
The Twilight Zone.